This is a comment period, and I'd like to make a couple comments because I don't know why. A while back, some comments were made, and I chose not to answer them. I thought I would take the high ground and that things would even out and cooler heads would prevail and more intelligent people would think these things through and talk about them, but it doesn't seem that that's what's happening. So I want to answer a couple of statements. I want to rebut a few statements that were made. One statement was made by you, sir, regarding a grant for the work that was done in his community house, the windows and all of this. Your statement was, my predecessor went out and got a grant to do this work. The facts are that NOPEC, the Northeast Ohio Electric Aggregate, contacted all communities in the area and says, you all have $50,000 here. All you have to do is sign some papers to get it. And all you have to do is come up with something that you're going to do that's going to save energy and write it up and we'll give you the money. And that's what all other communities did. However, Nelson, in its infinite wisdom, had to get a grant writer, a professional grant writer who happened to be related to one of the people on the board. Coincidence, if you will. To write a grant for money that they were just passing out. We're not talking about any kind of grant that you had to actually compete for. They just were passing the money out if you wanted to put windows in or heating and air conditioning or insulation. It was handwritten for this kind of an operation. But we got a professional grant writer. I believe we paid him $5,000 to write a grant after the money was already in our account. Am I correct? At least a part of it was already in our account. Then we talked about purchasing, and I go back this far. We talked about purchasing a new dump truck. For those of you that don't understand what competitive bidding is, it's when you put your specifications out there for a specific piece of equipment, and people that deal in that kind of equipment offer you bids. They say, I'll sell you this truck for this much money. I'll sell you this for this much money. Whatever. We had 4 or 5 people that responded to that. We took the lowest bid. Now, Joe here seems to think that was a big mistake, that there was a way to do that cheaper. Yet, he can't provide a truck that was compatible. We looked at used trucks, but the board decided they didn't want to buy a used truck, so we wanted to buy a brand new one. We put out competitive bids. We took the lowest bid. That's what we did. Now, 6 months later, 8 months later, somebody goes, oh, we could have bought this other truck somewhere. But not that day. And that's the part that aggravates me. When we went to buy the piece of equipment, no, that was the lowest price then. Am I right or wrong on that?
You're right.
And then when we bought the peripheral equipment that went on it, it was from the state bid, which was pre-bid already. None of this, nobody made any money off of it. If there was another truck out there that met the specifications, that could have did the job, then it should have come forward at that time. You can't wait 6, 8 months later to come up with something. And these phantom things that pop out of the woodwork with, well, we could have got this one over there, but we can't. Because it wasn't there. It didn't exist. And then the other thing is, Joe, you tell me, this building right here defines Nelson Township. It's a treasure. It's an icon. In 2006, we put a replacement levy on a ballot, which would have increased people's taxes by a modest $20 a year. And it failed miserably. And the money was earmarked specifically for this building because we were dealing with the heating costs. And we said, listen, if we could get a little more money in here, we could afford to keep this building open all year. We put it on a ballot as a replacement levy, which would have meant a new levy. It would have increased the cost a little bit. But no, the people voted it down. The people voted it down. We put it on as a renewal and it passed. The renewals generate no extra money. And you tell me that the community rallies behind this stuff, but when the community had a chance to throw a few dollars into it, they chose not to. Those are the realities. These are facts. I don't deal in conjecture or ifs or hearsays. These are the facts. When we look back over Nelson's finances, people need to understand. Mr. Elijah, you're running for election. You need to understand this. Money is earmarked for specific things. Road and bridge money, gas tax money, motor vehicle money is earmarked for specifically that. Or any other money that we spend, whether it's on this gazebo out here or the ball field or anything like that, has to come from the general fund. And our general fund is anemic at best. Most of the wages come out of that. Most of the health care comes out of that. All of that stuff comes out of that fund. Our budget does not increase unless a levy is increased. We haven't put a new levy, we haven't put a replacement levy on a ballot since the 90s. And let me take you back to the late 90s, 98, 99. We bought that Bobcat. We built that building down there. Why? Where did that money come from? Up until then, we were operating off of renewal levies from the 70s. From the 70s to the late 90s, all they were renewals. Renewals generate no extra money. Fuel prices went up, costs for the building went up, wages went up, health insurance went up, all of that went up. We kept tightening the belt, tightening the belt. In the late 90s, we went through a situation where we had, 3 or 4 different clerks in a couple year period. Somebody dropped the ball. And the levy didn't get put on a ballot. When a levy goes on a ballot that wasn't on it before, it's a brand new levy. It renews, it doesn't renew, it happens at today's prices. So all of a sudden, we were rich because those 2 road and bridge levies that just went on a ballot, this time as renewals, went on as brand new levies in 98. And people understood that somebody screwed up and they didn't get on a ballot, so they voted for him. At that time, in 98, we had some new construction here, and it generated some extra money. And we had money, and that's exactly what happened. That's how that skid steer got bought, that's how that property got bought, and that's how that building got started down there. And now, we're back up here where all we're doing is renewing levies. We're working off of 98, and we're in 2013. Healthcare costs have went up. They've probably tripled since that period of time, or at least 150%. And we're trying to do that with that money. And it's not that I don't want to do these things that go on. It's not that I don't want to park. It's not that I don't want to see these things happen. It's just that our money is earmarked by the state where it can go. That building that we tore down with road and bridge money because it was still a road and bridge building. Had we not done that, then the costs of that building would have had to come out of the general fund. Any repairs would have had to come out of the general fund. This is how government works. This is how township government works. We're trustees. The state gives us the money and they tell us where to spend it. And we don't have a whole lot of leeway what we can do with it in between. And that's the way the world works. That's the way the township world works. You folks like the idea of Pixley Park. What you did is admirable. You created a development committee and you're making things happen at the grassroots efforts. That's great. Freedom tried to put an initiative on a ballot for a park. What happened to it? Anybody know? I tell you, it failed miserably. And that's what happens. If we were to put an issue on a ballot, and I would do it in a minute. You folks, anybody in here that wants something done, give me a petition with some names on it, and I'll do it in a moment. You folks complain about that building over there and all of this issue, but nobody has ever brought a petition to this table with 300 or 400 signatures on it that said, save that building, or we want a park, or we want this, or we want... Nobody's ever done that. All I hear is 2 or 3 people that say, well, we should do this, or we should do that. I would get behind it in a minute. When I got elected to this job, there were 900 voters that voted that time. Give me some number in there somewhere that makes sense. We operate off of a majority rule. Any of you folks in this room, you gentlemen that wanted the speed limit change out there, presented me with a petition, 25 or 30 signatures. We passed it on to ODOT and got what we could get out of it. But nobody has ever come forth with any of that kind of stuff before. I'm a product of the Cleveland public school systems, as some of you folks that are in here are. I grew up through the 60s. You were taught to be an individual. Don't follow the crowd. Do what you think is best. Think for yourself. That's what I try to do in this job right here. I try to think for myself. I try to do what I think is best for the community at large. I'm not here to play politics. I tell people I'm not a politician. I'm here to try to educate people. That's why I'm telling you how the funding works. Every time we put up a sign, it comes out of the Road and Bridge Fund. Every time we do something, there's a fund for it. When we do a culvert pipe, a crossover pipe, or anything like that, it comes out of the Road and Bridge Fund. When we paint the inside of this building, it comes out of the general fund. When we bought that Batwing mower, Mr. Finney had to justify that part of that was going to be used on the roads work up around that building so that Road and Bridge Fund money could be used for that. Dixley Park didn't want to donate any money to that, did they? No, not a penny. But we bought it. We had a grant, huh?
Quarry Park donated.
What?
Quarry Park donated that money for the battle.
Not all of it. They donated $3,000 of the $5,000. Where'd the other $2,000 come from?
I have no idea what you paid.
From here.